Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Robert Conrad, Cleveland State University, the Chautauqua Institution, the Cleveland Clinic, and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. My name is Marieli Luengo, and I'm a proud City Club member. I am so pleased to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Nelson Isaac Colón Tarraz, President of the Puerto Rico Community Foundation. As we all know, on September 20, 2017, Hurricane Maria, the deadliest Atlantic hurricane in more than a decade, made a landfall on Puerto Rico, causing widespread destruction and plunging the island into a blackout that lasts for months. The storm truthfully magnified the long-standing issues affecting the island, crushing debt, deep poverty, government bankruptcy, and crumbling infrastructure, as well as the vast disconnect in between the United States and Puerto Rico. Funding for repairs and rebuilding initiatives stand at $62 million, and to give you a comparable, Texas got 341 after Hurricane Harvey. The lack of funding to repair and rebuild have proven devastating to the island. The power grid still fragile. The death toll was raised nearly 3,000 people following a study conducted by the George Washington University, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters in modern history. And while reconstruction efforts are still underway, another hurricane season is up to us. So where do Puerto Rico go from here? Dr. Colón Tarraz is with us today to discuss the role of philanthropy and investment in strengthening the island and addressing many of the inequalities. Dr. Colón Tarraz joined the Puerto Rico Community Foundation as a program director in 1988, and I was named president by 2000. As an impressive remark of who this man is, the foundation was reopened and running short days after the hurricane. 4 short days after the hurricane. It's a rumor that during the hurricane, somebody do not stop texting and calling. Under his leadership, the foundation have instituted several new programs in education, economics, and housing, and is currently the leader and spokesperson for a multi-sector movement for a world-class education in Puerto Rico. Dr. Colón Tarraz holds a Master of Arts in Cultural Anthropology from the State University of New York and a doctorate in education from Harvard University. He has received numerous recognitions. I kind of know all of them because it's my job, but in the most impressive ones include the Ernest and John Entrepreneur of the Year Award in the category of social responsibility, the Distinguished Faculty Recognition at 2002 University of Nice Seminar at the United Nations, and the Archibald Hopkins Medal. Way before, and I'm saying way before, the term Afro-Latino was trendy, Dr. Colón was an advocate for it. He believed in the full inclusion and pride in our social and racial heritage. And when I say way before trendy, I'm talking at the times that was dangerous to do it. In my career and many others, Dr. Colón Tarraz have been an honor to aspire to. Funny story. We went to Puerto Rico, some of us in this room, and I speak for the group saying that we truthfully knew what was happening after we left his office, and the overall feeling was that we should have gone to him first. And that go accordingly to my experience a few years ago. I was lucky enough to meet President Obama. The White staff was very precise about how important we are, and how we only have 20 seconds to greet the president. And I'm trying to savor the moment. I'm sure whatever feedback the president has to say will be the most meaningful thing to me and will forever be part of my heart. And I very quickly addressed the president saying that I'm a Puerto Rican in philanthropy. And he looked at me and said, "Do you know Dr. Colón?" Ladies and gentlemen, señoras y señores, Members and friends of the City Club, please welcome to the stage one of the very best of my country, the president of the Puerto Rico Community Foundation, Dr. Nelson Colón Tarraz.
Buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Every time I listen to such a kind introduction, I'm humbled. And I tend to think, did I really do that? But time passes by, and it's just a matter of keep your focus on doing good. And then things happen. So I'm really heartfelt. I'm really moved by the act of gratitude by all Clevelanders. I like to use Clevelanders, Ponceños, Sanjuaneros. I like to use that. People who belongs to those. Though that is what citizens are, people that belongs to the city, and I really like that. So you are Clevelanders, people who belongs to the city of Cleveland. But I really want to express a note of gratitude to all of you who lend your support during these most trying times. And I'm moved in saying that, and I want to say that first, because for Puerto Rico, after September the 20th, the connecting of its communities was a matter of survival. Some people didn't make it. We all know that already. But for the rest of us who really made it, the fact that we received support from all our communities became a matter of survival. So I want to also express my support to and my gratitude to Ron Richards, who gave us very practical things: money, a satellite telephone, which was a vital tool at the time, but above all, friendship and support. The Puerto Ricans in Ohio made us think and feel that we are two communities and one nation. And that's precisely the way that Puerto Rican society has evolved in the past couple of decades. I'm also thankful to the city of Cleveland that in the context of the Hispanic Heritage Month, the club led this free speech forum to celebrate the mutually enriching social, cultural, and economic relationships between Puerto Rico and Clevelanders. That is worthy of celebration. So I'm going to ask you a round of applause for that celebration. Please do so. And the reason I do that is because I think that the key concept is relationship. It's not what I give, it's not what I receive, but it's a matter of what we build together. So the free speech tradition of this forum really amplifies the potential for that relationship and for that dialogue. In a way, this is a continuation of a conversation that we had in Puerto Rico with a group of Cleveland leaders. That must have been like 1 or 2 months, right, after Maria. And yet, that visit was not the beginning of that conversation. For decades, Puerto Ricans and Clevelanders maintain an ongoing dialogue that quite possibly started with the relocation of Puerto Rican workers in Lorain, Ohio. According to Mrs. Lily Zeller, a daughter of a factory foreman for Ford Motor Company. The company was looking for highly skilled, responsible workers with families. I don't know what happens with us Puerto Rican, but that last clause needs to be included. Workers with families. What happened with workers without family? Something interesting must be happening with those workers without family. Anyway, the requirement was workers with families. In the year 1955, her family settled in Lorraine and bears several children. All became college graduates. Fortunately enough, and this is the wheel of the universe, by the year 2000, unbeknownst to me, she was the board chair of the Puerto Rico Community Foundation, and she was the person who hired me as their third president. So something good was coming out, Lorraine, Ohio. As it usually happens with population movements, a group of Puerto Rican students followed suit by attending Oberlin College, and most notably, Dr. Cesar Rey, who later became Secretary of Education in Puerto Rico. And close to home, and more personally, my very own daughter Kenya joined the group of young professionals who came to work for NPI. The city became a center, a gravitational center that began to attract high-skilled Puerto Rican workers and professionals, mostly attracted by the world-class stature of the Cleveland Clinic. And we all know, most notably, Dr. Carlos Romero, head of hepatology at the Cleveland Clinic Medical Faculty. The history of the relationship between the Cleveland Foundation and the Puerto Rico Community Foundation really reflects the intertwining of Puerto Rico with Clevelanders. But before history was history, I shall not forget that back in the 70s, I received in Puerto Rico a young, bright, and socially conscious man named Fred Goff, grandson of the founder of the Cleveland Foundation. Apparently, the circle of life brought me to what it meant to be, the Community Foundation field. The relationship between the Puerto Rico Community Foundation and the Cleveland Foundation dates back to 1983, when Homer Wadsworth, then retired president of the Cleveland Foundation, became the main architect of the Puerto Rico Community Foundation. The relationship reignited when I met Ron Richards, and friendship flourished instantly. Ron has visited Puerto Rico twice, and upon my invitation, became a member of the board of directors of Hispanics in Philanthropy, an organization that I was chairing at the time. Relying on the strength of the relationship between Cleveland and Puerto Rico, it is my purpose today to share with you the potential for community investing in Puerto Rico. And this is my flight plan for you. I will begin by sharing with you a general overview of Puerto Rico. Then I will try a collage of the future through snapshots of community investing in communities that are rising from Maria's social and economic devastation and moving towards self-reliance and self-development. I'll repeat that. And moving towards self-reliance and self-development. And I will land my presentation by extending you all an invitation to join the Puerto Rico Community Foundation in transforming these communities into beacons of light for the whole island. The history of the Puerto Rican community in Ohio mirrors the evolution of the Puerto Rican society. With the passing of time, Puerto Rico became a society composed by two communities, 5 million in the US and 3.3 million in Puerto Rico. While some people in Puerto Rico challenges the concept of migration, arguing that it is not more different than US citizens relocating from New York to Florida, the fact is that the Puerto Rican population movement has 4 distinct characteristics. One, American citizenship. And that American citizenship was granted in response to recruitment needs of the First World War. The US Congress granted citizenship to all new recruits and Puerto Ricans in 1917. Secondly, during the 40s, migration public policies enacted in Puerto Rico were implemented to send seasonal agricultural workers to farms in the East Coast. And the third distinct characteristic, very unique to Puerto Ricans, is circular migration. The compounded effect of the granting of the citizenship and migratory policies resulted in a continuous back and forth movement. And the US, and known to us as circular migration. In the last stage, it has an interesting effect. What started as a movement of farm workers, with the passing of time, Puerto Rico became a significant supplier of highly skilled professionals to the US labor market. Cases in point, NASA, where Puerto Rico has the highest number of engineers per ethnic group, and several medical facilities such as Houston Hospital, the Moffitt Cancer Center, and our very own Carlos Romero at the Cleveland Clinic. The most visible effect of Maria is in the US is the influx of Puerto Ricans escaping from the rigor of lack of water and power in the island. However, I want to submit to you that this population movement only followed a map predefined many decades earlier. The contour of the migratory process is defined by 5 major dimensions of the US-Puerto Rico relations: political, economic, cultural, and circular. Migration really defines the type of population movement that we see now in Puerto Rico. The fifth one is the Fiscal Management Board. That is the most recent addition to the contour of Puerto Rico's population movement. The political dimension is technically defined as a non-incorporated territory of the federal government, meaning that the island belongs to, but is not part of, the federal government. And this definition takes different forms along the Caribbean. When you look at other empires in the Caribbean, at the Dutch, at the English, at the French, this same definition takes a different form. So as a part of that political design, American citizenship was granted, and proportionately during the wars, more Puerto Rican has died in American wars than any other ethnic group. Dr. René Pinto Lugo, in a recent article, described this state of affairs as the inequity of equals. The economic relation can be described as a push and pull economy. The government, in an effort to attract investment capital, devised a public policy to attract US capital to invest in Puerto Rico. and create jobs for skilled workers, while at the same time pushing out farm workers towards cyclical work in U.S. farms. Years pass, as it often happens, and tax-intensive tools remain as a core strategy. First, it was manufacturing, followed by petrochemicals, pharmaceuticals in the 60s, and now incentives to wealthy individuals to relocate in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico being a tax haven. In all four periods of capital attraction, no significant efforts were made by the government to stimulate local capital growth. The equity lens got lost, and no significant wealth was created for the majority of the population. The process left the largest inequity gap among all jurisdictions in the U.S. and only third in the world, the highest poverty rate among all jurisdictions in the U.S., an employment rate that remains constant over 10%, and children poverty level exceeding 56%. Without a doubt, the Puerto Rican population individually, including myself, obtained significant gains from this transaction. The highest educational attainment in Central America and the Caribbean, higher comparable salaries in the region, although lower than any other jurisdiction, and the most coveted free pass to the mainland, the U.S. passport. In the social and economic balance sheet of history, where does that transactional strategy leave Puerto Rico? To put it bluntly, with a debt of over 120 billions. That size of debt far exceed the size of the economy in Puerto Rico, essentially meaning that 4 generations, forever, every children born in Puerto Rico will owe around $20,000 at birth. So that is a major challenge for any society until different approaches are taken. A fiscal management board was put in place, and their sole responsibility is to cut back on government services to extract money and increase revenue to pay bond holders. This is a strategy that has been used in other places and has not shown any positive results yet. A major problem with that strategy is that a basic principle of public finances is that the more poor is your population, the more public investment you need. If you're cutting back on your public investment, your population is going to grow poorer and poorer and poorer. So that is an unsolvable dilemma through that strategy. Considering that dilemma, I submit to you a grassroots approach to community investing. That is, philanthropic investing with a high social return on investment and socially responsible business investing with a double bottom return on investment, essentially meaning high social yield plus market rates of return. That is called the double bottom line. The investment tool that the Puerto Rico Community Foundation has available, tools that have available are: 1, the Puerto Rico Recovery Fund that many of you contributed to, thank you for that, and the Community Investment Fund, that is basically a way of using the nonprofit sector to stimulate economic activity in low-income communities in Puerto Rico. All banks in Puerto Rico are already on board on that strategy. Maria unveiled four major areas for community investing: energy, water, economic development. Five, energy, water, economic development, education, and housing. The energy power system, as we all know, is already restored and yet highly vulnerable. The system consists of 2,500 miles of transmission lines. That's the distance between New York and California. And 31,000 miles of distribution lines that equals the distance between Ecuador and the Patagonia. The government projects to transform the system into an affordable, reliable one that incorporates more renewable microgrids. The niche for energy community investing is right there with the microgrids. The Puerto Rico Community Foundation, in partnership with residents, already launched the first resident-owned solar community in Puerto Rico. The community of Toro Negro in the town of Ciales in the Central Mountains of Puerto Rico organized the Toro Negro Power Authority, Inc. That authority generates and distributes energy to 25 families at a fraction of its original price, providing solar energy to 85 people in that extremely isolated community. These are the beacon of light that I'm inviting you to support and to join in. Following this experience, an interesting turn happened in public policy. The government passed the bill on solar co-ops for all Puerto Rico. I don't want to take the credit for that. It's just the sequence. Our goal is that before the 2020, we will have more than 10 solar communities in Puerto Rico. The call to action there is, considering the huge demand for alternative sources of energy, the Puerto Rico Community Foundation will launch the Gift of Light campaign, and that will focus on powering at a minimum 10 additional solar sites. These will be the beacons of light in Puerto Rico. 3,000 people, a little bit less, died in Puerto Rico as a direct consequence of lack of access to medical services. The majority of these people die because community clinics didn't have power to maintain their clinics operating. There are 100 clinics of that sort. They are back into business, they are back in operation, but in September 21, they were rendered inoperable, essentially meaning that old people, sick people, bedridden people didn't have access to medical services. It is also estimated that the only trauma center in Puerto Rico, the average time to take care of a patient is 6 hours, as compared with 1 hour in the US. So if you get a trauma injury in Puerto Rico, declare yourself dead because it's going to take long to get to the trauma center. So it is a moral and practical imperative that no one in Puerto Rico, no one, needs to die for lack of access to medical care. The goal for the Puerto Rico Community Foundation, and I hope for you too, in partnership with the Primary Care Association, is to provide backup systems for 100 primary care in Puerto Rico. Under this initiative, the Puerto Rico Community Foundation has already powered 24 clinics at an average of $30,000 per clinic. We are actively raising $2 million toward that goal of providing sustained solar energy to 100 clinics in Puerto Rico. The collapse of the power grid had a cascading effect, shutting off more than 700 communities of their water supplies. Many communities in Puerto Rico didn't have access to water because the water pumps runs on electricity and the system was down. Many opted for electric generators that exhausted their useful life very rapidly. As many other organizations, the Puerto Rico Community Foundation rushed to provide gallons of water to communities in need. Soon, we realized that there was a need for a more sustainable supply. In partnership with one community organization in Yauco, the Puerto Rico Community Foundation supported the digging of a well in their community. Dear compatriotas, this is going back to 19th century technology. That was the state of situation in Puerto Rico. From there, the foundation moved to a third level of the water strategy, the support of community aqueducts. 19 aqueducts are now part of this wave, and our goal is to engage 181 additional aqueducts in a network of 200 that will provide sustainable supply of water to 200 communities in Puerto Rico. To meet this goal, the Puerto Rico Community Foundation will be raising $10 million. The problem with the water in Puerto Rico was people have access to water. The water was contaminated by leptospirosis. So the third consequence of that was people were sick because they were contaminated by an infectious disease coming out of the water from rivers. According to government estimates, a quarter or 38% of housing units in Puerto Rico were damaged or partially destroyed. And now that number is down to 166,000. So the Puerto Rico Community Foundation decided to take a highly targeted approach to deal with the housing issue in Puerto Rico, which is extremely complicated. Land title, successions, houses that were not rebuilt in 1989 according to code, a highly complicated issue. So the Puerto Rico Community Foundation, in collaboration with the Ricky Martin Foundation and in collaboration with the mayor of Loíza, basically we said, who are the neediest in this group of people needing the rebuilding of their houses? The census came out with 37 houses, and we just decided we're going to go forward. FEMA eventually will catch up. The government of Puerto Rico will eventually catch up. And we are at the point now that we just delivered to the resident the first part of the initial 37 houses. FEMA is still trying to figure out how to do that. The government of Puerto Rico is still in the planning stage, and we are already finishing houses and giving those houses to residents. But that was not a free lunch. Residents were required to were required to provide sweat equity. And sweat equity came in the form of direct labor, came in the form of food, came in the form of receiving volunteers who came to Loíza to work, but it is a joint community engagement activity with a very concrete result. So we'll move forward. Our goal is 225 new houses in Loíza, and for sure that will become an example for other towns in Puerto Rico. Education. Schools were closed. Our schools in time of disasters are used as shelters. I have lived through, I think, 7 or 8 hurricanes already. and the education system hasn't been able to solve a critical issue. What do you do with students? What do you do with kids when you close schools? So what we decided was we took a readiness approach. We just said students are going to be ready when school opens and teachers are going to be ready. So 2 strategies. Basically, we provided backpacks for a student who has lost everything in the process of facing the hurricane. And secondly, teachers will be given mini grants so they can create projects and they can create innovative learning experiences for students in Puerto Rico. So in closing, I want to share with you this quote that I found it quite interesting in the middle of these most challenging situations. Sooner or later, life teaches us through great love and suffering that the diversity of the world is there to complete us as human beings. Let's take that opportunity. Thank you. This is my pleasure.
Good afternoon, I'm Dan Moulthrop with the City Club, and today we're enjoying a forum with Dr. Nelson Colón Taraz, president of the Puerto Rico Community Foundation, the Fundación Comunitaria de Puerto Rico. We're about to begin the audience Q&A. Thank you, Jose. We're about to begin the audience Q&A, and we welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, and those of you joining us via our live stream. If you'd like to tweet a question, please tweet it at the City Club, and our team will work it into the program. Holding our microphones today are our Marketing and Outreach Coordinator, Julia Wong, and Content Coordinator, Bliss Davis. May we have our first question, please? We have one up front. Dr. Cole.
Doctor, this is a two-pronged question. Firstly, with regard to Puerto Rico in general, then second, with respect to the hurricane itself. What issues would you like to disabuse the broader community with respect to both of those issues, meaning misconceptions that they have about Puerto Rico, misconceptions that the broader community has about the hurricane?
Yeah, we need at this point the development of a new narrative about the hurricane, and it should be a very specific narrative. I mean, I'm tempted to say, a narrative about hope and love. That's fine, and that's fine, but that has a surname. And it is a narrative about hope and love and rebuilding the island with our own strength, focusing on self-sufficiency and self-development. For me, that is the surname for the narrative around hope and love, is self-sufficiency and self-development. We have the knowledge to do that. We did that already, in fact, in Puerto Rico. We have the technology now to do that. So let's do it. There is no reason for not do something like that using what I'm suggesting, which is the small unit, is the community level, is community engagement. And my hope is that that will provoke a cascading effect that eventually will influence the rest of Puerto Rico. And in fact, if I'm going to go to the grand scheme, I think it's pretty much the only way out. The second question I forgot, obviously.
Puerto Rico in general and the island specifically. So, what about just generally in Puerto Rico? What are the misconceptions that really make you unhappy when you see them broadcast?
Thank you for raising that question. It's key, it's crucial. Basic misconception is help will come. Help will come. So that puts the population in a state of wait and see. Hate might come. However, it falls on us to to address critical issues like the issues of development, the issues of old people, the issues of kids under the poverty level, and start resolving those before help come. That would be perhaps my major concern, is just being in the starting gate, being in a waiting pattern until help comes. If help comes in 10 years, we might have lost a generation. Yes.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Listening to you speak about self-sufficiency and self-strength, do you think that the residents of Puerto Rico are more inclined to be pro-statehood or pro-independence after the way they were treated by the U.S. government?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think I spent like 3 hours practicing for the answer. I don't think that after the initial response of the federal government, that the balance is inclined in any significant direction. However, there is one study conducted by one university which basically found that the pro-independence movement grew by 7 percentage points. So, I mean, these are defined that it's determined by the sample, it's determined by the way you raise a question. So, but for me, the problem is that the wait and see attitude really puts everybody on the on a waiting pattern. So, according to the study, there is a growth towards independence. And less emotions around statehood. The challenge there is, and I think that the signals that the federal government is sending to Puerto Rico are quite strong. It is not only the president who said, you know, you have no chance, don't even come to my neighborhood. Congress said that. The Supreme Court said that in another case. So apparently, for now, all the possibilities for a serious discussion around statehood are closed. So my position is, and I want to make this very clear, I think that we should all come together and have a conversation with the federal government to be serious about the process. Don't keep sending back the problem to the victim. Essentially, sending back the problem to the victim is, I possess you since 1898. I have divulged you of your rights. And now, at this point, I want all of you to create a supermajority. And when you do that, then you come back and talk to me. We have done that 7 times already. The last supermajority was 93%. No reaction, not even, send me an email. So I think that Puerto Rico needs to turn a firm stand and say, at least, and we all Puerto Ricans, the 8 million of us, and say at least, let's be serious about it. At least say whether you are willing to have a serious conversation or not, and just tell that to the world, and we'll take it from there. That, I'm sure, will take us in a different route than the holding pattern. But thank you for the question.
Yes, I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about how the foundation went out and engaged community groups and helped and really set the tone in terms of minimizing the process to get dollars into the community as quickly as possible. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah. We did several things. I mean, for the foundation, we have never faced a hurricane of this magnitude, but we have been through several others. So we have some institutional experiences. experience. So we did a couple of things. One, several foundations in Puerto Rico basically said, go to our webpage, and then we'll see. We knew from day one that wasn't available at all. In my house, the only thing that was working in terms of communication was the landline, which has been buried, I think, that for 7 years, and that worked. So basically, we use a courier system. Basically, it's like, you know, like the old El Correo. Yeah, in a horse. So it's really in a horse. And so we recruited Boy Scouts. Because La Yegua, we recruited Boy Scouts because these are the young people knowledgeable to deal with that kind of situation. So senior Boy Scouts, we recruited 2 of them. They went out and they became los mensajeros, back and forth, norte a sur, de este a oeste, just connecting with non-profit organizations and so on. So using that method, person to person, going in whatever, jeeps, horses, whatever you need to get there, we were able to collect the information. We were able to deliver water purifiers. We were able to get in contact with the Yauco people. And we were able to start working around the notion of solar panels. So very simple technology, backed by the way, a strategic framework we designed around water. I mean, when we distributed the first 2,000 gallons of water, we knew back then that we were going to end up in community aqueducts. We knew the route was fairly clear for us. And the same with solar energy and the same with housing. So, but we did organize at the very beginning. We have protocols for these to happen. But we knew that it was we developed a concept, the community first responders, that's one concept. And the second concept is the community is the survival unit. So community in itself, grassroots community provided water, food, connected residents, take care of the sick person, take care of the elders. All that was done in small units of 25 families, 50 families, 100 families. They were for many months. I'm not talking 3 days. I'm taking many, many months. They were for many months the survival unit in Puerto Rico. Yes.
My name is Ana Garcia. Thank you. I have a local television program that elevates the Hispanic community. We went back in May to do an update on the situation in Puerto Rico, and as we were landing, we saw the blue tarps.
Yeah.
No roofs. Is
Yeah.
that still the case? And if
That's
yes,
still the
why?
case. That's still the case. That's still the case. That's FEMA holding pattern. That's what it is, to say it in 3 words. FEMA holding pattern, that's what it is. What we decided and what we were attempting to do is that through this example in Loíza, people will take the solution for that problem in their hands and then deal with FEMA, and then we will send you in court. Deal with FEMA later. Because too many people, too many houses, the weight is just unbearable. I don't know if you have been under a blue tarp, the temperature under a tarp goes up like by 15 degrees. In a situation of 90 degrees like Loíza, you're really exposing yourself seriously to some damage to yourself. So yeah, there's still a lot of blue tarps, and those are the people in the holding pattern.
Hi, I'm Alejandro Garcia, and I'm from Maple Heights High School. And I have a question that I just came up this morning, and it's very interesting. One of my students were asking after watching videos of the Hurricane Maria and all the disaster that caused in Puerto Rico. One student asked me, how about the insurance company? Have they been helping? What's the part that they are doing? and especially not for specific houses, more for infrastructures, hospitals, and government think that they are supposed to be insured or somehow they are supposed to be guaranteed?
Thank you, Alejandro. That is a key question. Really, it is key. Two quick answers to that. One, insurance companies behaved like insurance companies. So they bought time, they dodged situations, they went around, they required from residents more proof of damages and so on. So that's one part of it. But the second part, it was just discovered recently. Insurance companies in Puerto Rico didn't have enough reserve to cover all the damages. So we just saw the first one that when bankruptcy, the government is going to take over that one. So one goes with the other. The question is why insurance are giving the people the runaround, and basically, it's lack of cash reserve to deal with a situation of this magnitude, which do not excuse. It is not an excuse for the insurance company because Puerto Rico is right in the corridor of hurricanes in the Caribbean, right in there. So as an insurer, you know that is a risk you need to deal with and you need to manage. So insurance companies are in a very tough spot in Puerto Rico at this point.
Hello, my question is in regards to education. Do you foresee a big brain drain on the island? And then what happens in 10 years?
Yeah, it's happening already. And there are two parts to that question. One is Puerto Rico has one of the most sophisticated university system in terms of preparing professionals and so on. So as I said at the beginning of my comments, supply intellectual capital to big institutions in the U.S. That's very cheap in Puerto Rico. So that's taxpayers' money, basically. And then what is happening, the conditions are unbearable for physicians, for example. I just read that wealthy individuals that were attracted to Puerto Rico because Puerto Rico was declared a tax haven are going back because the infrastructure is not working. So what we need to do fairly rapidly is to support and invest the public education system. There are several studies that basically said young families of professionals, their number one priority is the education of their kids. Salary comes second. So people relocate not for the amount of money. If you have a lot of money and a lousy education system, most likely that person will say, I'll go to Portland. So you need to combine both. I just finished myself, I was lead researcher for that. I just finished an interesting study of a school in a situation of high social risk, high crime, drug-infested, extremely high poverty, 86% of people under the poverty level. The students, that was a school of, declared a school of excellence. Students were really hitting the ball out of the park. So if you want to know how they did it, just read that study. My pleasure.
Buenos días. My name is Diana Gates, and I sit on the Hispanic Alliance board, and also from the Cleveland Clinic Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And my question is, I want to congratulate you on your work in terms of the infrastructure building that's going on with the solar and the housing and in terms of the water infrastructure. But part of the rebuilding is going to require all segments of society to be engaged. And so what are the growth industries in terms of the job markets that you're looking for investment in for Puerto Rico so you can attract and mitigate that potential brain drain that actually continues to happen?
Yeah, if you look at what we did, what we did was just a reading of what we call the sources of life. Needs becomes demand in an economic market. So there is demand in Puerto Rico for alternative sources of energy. There is demand for water. There is demand for medical services. There is demand for high quality education. So if you just transform the lens from need to demand, the niches are right there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You can, here. Today at the City Club, we've been enjoying a forum with Dr. Nelson Colón, president of the Puerto Rico Community Foundation. Our forum today is the James Lipscomb Memorial Forum on the Philanthropic Spirit in Community Leadership, made possible by a generous gift from the Friends of James S. Lipscomb. We appreciate their support of City Club programming. Community partners for our forum today include Bienvenidos a Cleveland, the Hispanic Alliance, the Hispanic Roundtable, and the Northeast Ohio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Our hospitality partner is the Metropolitan at the 9 Hotel. We appreciate your partnership, all of you. Additionally, we welcome guests at tables hosted by Cuyahoga Community College, Case Western Reserve University, Lorraine El Centro, and Lorraine El Centro. And lastly, we welcome students from Maple Heights High School. Student participation in City Club forums is provided by many foundations, including the William M. Weiss Foundation. Thank you all for being here today. That brings us to the end of our program, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Colón, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Our forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Robert Conrad, Cleveland State University, the Chautauqua Institution, the Cleveland Clinic, and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland Incorporated.